Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. Let's start with a little bit about, would you like to tell our audience a little bit about your background in startups and ecosystem building? Let's start there.
Yeah, so I'm a tech geek myself, master of computer science, and yeah, always been interested in building things. And I used to attend a lot of hackathons. And so when I was attending a lot of hackathons, I got also involved into this organization called Junction. So that's kind of a leading hackathon franchise in the world, I guess. And they organized one of the largest hackathons in the world in Finland, Espoo, and it gathers like 1,500 hackers from all around the world. Then I ended up there as a volunteer. I was also volunteering at Slush, that many of you might know. But then I ended up also working at Junction. They asked me whether I would be interested in building a community there. And yeah, one thing I noticed was that the sort of hackers and people who like to build things are very close to entrepreneurs. So there's actually not a big difference between the two. There are people who like to solve problems and take the world head on. And yeah, so after working at Junction, I was thinking what I would do. And I was thinking of working in AI or going to Silicon Valley. But then I was asked whether I'd be interested in working at KIUAS or leading KIUAS as the CEO. And yeah, I mean, it has been awesome. And ever since I've been at KIUAS, and yeah, we have a team of 5 people, and we try to help startups and entrepreneurs.
How is it coming from the hackathons and being involved in platforms to running an accelerator? What are the similarities or differences in what you do?
Yeah, so I think the similarities is that founders and hackers are amazing people. And anyone who has I would say being a hacker, an attendee at a hackathon is like the light version of being an entrepreneur, because that only lasts for a weekend. But being an entrepreneur is something that lasts for hopefully a longer time. And so I just have to say that there's a huge respect for all of them for trying to solve really hard problems. And yeah, I guess some of the similarities include that you need to be a multi-talent. So it doesn't matter if you're good at programming. If you cannot create a product, no one is going to care about it. And also as an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter if you can build a product if you can't build a business around it as well. There's a lot of things that you need to do all the time, and you're constantly in a hurry. And I think the sort of time management part is always crucial. So a lot of teams end up in hackathons. A lot of teams end up working on the product or what they do for the entire weekend, and only on the last few hours they think about, so how are we going to tell the story of this thing we've built? And also they might try to build a ready-made product instead of they should be building a demo or something kind of like a proof of concept or something that this really works, and this is what we got done for a weekend. Imagine what we could do in the next 2 months. Of course, depending on the hackathon. But then as an entrepreneur, I think there's the same things, that a lot of teams have problems in focusing on the right things. So they end up focusing on how do we make this product perfect so it addresses all of the challenges. Very often when we see software startups, a lot of them think that they should right away include all the features that something like Google has. So it's going to have the search engine, it's going to have the maps, it's going to have the Gmail. But in reality, those things, all the other cool features that benefit from the original functionality, they come a lot later. And a good example that I'm thinking about is one of the most recent success stories in Finland is Volt, this food delivery company. And they have been in business, 10 years or something. And only now they've brought the sort of delivering also groceries to your home. And I'm 99% sure that they thought already in the day one, or when they started delivering food from restaurants, they were also thinking that what else could we deliver? Could we deliver groceries? Could we deliver food? But I think they made the hard decision to postpone all the other things and focus on the essential. And that is why they are the leading player in Finland and in many other countries. And I think that is the hard part of being an entrepreneur, is that there's 99 things you should ignore, and there's a lot of things you should focus all your energy almost on. And I think that's something similar that's also in the hackathons.
No, but this is an amazing learning. So all the wonderful entrepreneurs and ecosystem players who are joined in for today and who will later be listening to this conversation or viewing it on Startup Grind. So three very important points. I was just making, while you were like shooting these, I was just making notes here, because you said something very important, that in today's world, when you need to stand up, present your ideas, develop your ideas, get traction around them, get customers. So being multi-talented is a big thing. So usually our traditional thinking has been in schools, have one talent, excel in it, develop specialization, as opposed to entrepreneurship is a new landscape, and having multiple talents. And then the second point that you said, like managing your time, really good. So if you can manage your talents, your times, and then still keep your focus, and that's where I think you touched on something very important. Maybe it's the hackathon time pressure which still helps entrepreneurs create strong ideas and not get deep in the product. While if you are creating a startup, you have a year. So you start adding features. Maybe it's to do with the time, like the more time pressure you put in on your startup or an idea. Do you think entrepreneurs should give themselves short times to develop things?
Well, absolutely. I think if you look at the sort of mentality in, for example, Silicon Valley, it's that you should get a new version of a product out the door in 2 weeks if we're talking about software. And well, I think it's a manifold thing, to be honest, but I think a lot of people get stuck, right? So if you're not making progress, but you're kind of like, you're not dying, you're not growing, then that's usually the worst part to be. So you rather want to like fail and find out that no one wants to buy your product. Then with that learning, you can move on and do something else. Or if someone actually wants to buy the thing you're building, then you're like, hey, that's great. And then you can grow with the demand. But I think the sort of time aspect is very tricky in the way that you need to be ready to commit to your startup for a longer period of time. So the usual rule of thumb that we have is that it's 10 years that you need to be able to work on it. And the challenges, of course, are going to change. Your job is not going to stay the same as a founder of a company. But when you're trying out things, when you're still learning about what is the actual product going to be, then the sort of time interval, what it takes from idea to validating it with customers, that means making them test it and seeing, are people buying this? Will someone pay for this thing I've built, this MVP? That should be very short. So as short as possible. But then you also should be like ready to try out like 50 different ideas. Another good example, I think, Angry Birds, a very classic example, at least in Finland, is that Angry Birds, the mobile game, it was Rovio's, I think, 52nd game that they made. So their success wasn't that all of their games were super awesome. It was more like they were ready to kill the bad ideas, right? And this is not a new idea in entrepreneurship literature or science, that you should be able to toss away the bad ideas. But I think if you can shorten the time span, so if you can be faster in determining why a certain idea did not work, and this doesn't mean that you should cut off ideas before you try them out. So if you get into this cycle of doubt that you feel like no idea is good enough, then you're also not going to try anything. You're not going to learn anything. So I think the sort of time aspect, it's really all about just maximizing learning in a certain period of time. And usually what that means is that you have to try out things, you have to talk to people, see how they use your product, then do another version, and never stick to your ideas too much. Love the problem, not the product.
Okay, great point. And you made a very interesting comment here as well of taking time in the long term. So having a long term, like 5-10 years commitment to the startup itself, but testing out, getting feedbacks and killing ideas which are not working, and having no, how would you say, emotional attachment to it, but moving on, learning and building something new. Great. You're joining us from Finland, and that's something we are trying at Startup Grind also, is to get perspectives from other countries and other regions into our Stockholm community. So thank you so much for joining us from Finland. Tell us a little bit about KIUAS and how you see Finland and Swedish startup ecosystems are similar or different, if you want to share some insight there.
Yeah. So we're at KIUAS. We're a nonprofit accelerator, and our birth was at this co-working / accelerator / entrepreneurial hub called Startup Sauna. So in case your Finnish isn't so fluent, KIUAS means the stove of the sauna. So it's kind of like the heart of sauna. So already by our name, we are kind of attached to this larger ecosystem and other great initiatives. So from Startup Sauna, some other things that have been related to it has been Slush, which is one of the largest startup conferences in Europe. Alto ES, which kind of spawned the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Finland. So it's a student organization that just wanted to bring more entrepreneurial activity. And to this day, they're one of the most active entrepreneurial societies in any sort of university around the world. They're like one of the biggest ones, at least in Europe. Okay. And so KIUAS was kind of attached and related to many of these. But the short story is that we used to have a program each year in the summer called Summer of Startups. And then at some point, we changed it up. We have free programs each year. Now we also help startups in earlier parts. So when we're just working on the idea, we have the KIUAS Start, which is kind of a shorter program to try out your idea. Then we have the KIUAS Accelerator this summer, which ends in this glamorous demo day, to which all of you are, of course, invited as well. I can post the link to the chat a little bit later, which is tomorrow, and why we're actually having this conversation about demo days. But yeah, and then we've also created online services, because the problem with accelerators all around the Nordics and everywhere else is that they scale really horribly. So ironically, we try to help companies scale, but we don't scale. So for that, we've also created some services that do scale. And one of them is a course on entrepreneurship called Starting Up. It's a free online course, and at least in Finland, in quite many universities, you can get student credits out of it. So shout out to all of the students there. If you're looking to score some extra credits, you might want to do the course and ask your student counselor whether that qualifies. At least in Finland, it does. And yeah, it's just about all the basics. So if you don't know what a product market fit or venture capital or a term sheet or a shareholders agreement is, it's a very compact course, sort of covering all of the basics you need to know, and also about the sort of mindset you might need to have. So when I mentioned, for example, the 10-year marathon that a startup is, that is something that not everyone knows about. So we kind of wanted to bring also there some insights about how do entrepreneurs think about entrepreneurship, and not only like, kind of what you should know about entrepreneurship before you jump to it. And then lastly, we have a platform called Inside. So inside.kiuas.com. I can put that link also later to the chat. It's a platform we created for finding co-founders. So one problem we noticed is that if you are lucky enough, like the KIUAS team is, that you're embedded in the startup ecosystem, you get to meet investors and startups, and you know other people who work in other accelerators, or they work in incubators, or somehow else they just help out entrepreneurs. You probably have a good network of co-founders who to pick from when you are building your startup. You might, find a friend who you used to work with, or the very common story is that you start a company with a colleague, or you started with a friend. But the truth be told, not everyone is so lucky, and not everyone wins the sort of co-founder lottery, so that you already in your network, you have this perfect person who complements every skill you have, and they would be like a good match to build a company with. So we built KIUAS Inside, which is a platform where you can find a co-founder. So if you either have an idea or you want to be found, you can publish or sign up on the platform and just start browsing ideas and people. And if you have a startup idea, but for example, you're looking for a CTO, a technical co-founder, go there and look for people with tech background. Or if you're looking for someone who would know design or marketing, go check it out. All of these things are for free. As said, we're a nonprofit. We don't charge anything. And we just try to help, create even better companies and more startups. And yeah, I highly recommend everyone interested to check this out. I can put those links then into the chat a little bit later, so you don't have to go deep into Google or anything to find them, even though our SEO is top notch, of course.
No, this is really good. Great. I really like the initiative that you talked about, the entrepreneurship course. I think something like that is needed, and something like that is needed not from an academic perspective, but more from a practical perspective. So I think the insights that you bring in there, they're great. And the co-founder platform also. Now, does the platform do the matchmaking for you, or is it more like a directory service?
Yeah, it's more like kind of like a directory service, I'd say. So you get lists of, you can see all of the projects that are there. You can see all of the profiles that are there. And you can, through the platform, contact whoever feels like is the right match for you. And the sort of paradigm change that we're trying to push with the platform, KIUAS Insight, is that no longer it doesn't have to be that you have this one magical person and then your entire startup relies on it, but rather, what if you have an idea and you can talk with 20 different people, and then you can kind of like test the idea, crowdsource, what kind of feedback you get. And when you're building the founding team, you don't have to choose automatically the one colleague or friend you have talked about building a company with, but you can diversify your options and you can see what else could there be in the co-founding team except this best friend who probably has a similar degree or might have a similar background as you. So also kind of from a diversity point of view, we have a lot of hopes for the platform, and already we're seeing some pretty promising results.
Now, I think something that you mentioned also, like a journal place where you find these founder agreements and term sheets. I think that's also a good resource for startups. I coach a lot of early stage startups myself, so that space is very fuzzy right now. And there has to be some authenticity stamp behind, like this, okay, this co-founder agreement is validated by an accelerator or some bona fide entrepreneur. So this has weight in the market. So I think great that you guys are doing this initiative. How has COVID been for your accelerator and other programs? Have you been doing this on place, or has this been virtual? How has been the experience been with virtual, if you have gone virtual?
Yeah, so I would say that we are an accelerator that probably has the most experience in running virtual accelerators, like fully virtual accelerators. And the reason is that back in 2020 spring, 1 week before our KIUAS Start program was supposed to start, we had to take everything virtual. And so we got like first experiences right away when COVID started. Last year, we organized 3 programs virtually. And this year, we are now running the second one with the KIUAS Accelerator. And we've had our fair share of learnings, and the biggest sort of negative impact is the community part. So it's a lot harder when people can't, chat freely. We've been trying to mitigate this through some events, some virtual, some also in Helsinki on site when the COVID situation has been better. But overall, that is like the biggest loss we've had. However, we've had a lot of gains as well. So for example, this summer's program is the first one in our history where we've accepted teams from outside of Finland. So we've noticed that we have resources to grow the programs a little bit, but also we'd be interested in seeing whether we can help teams that are not only in Finland, but also those who are in, let's say, Sweden or Norway or Denmark or the Baltics. And so for that, we have opened now the sort of country restrictions of our program, so that even though the countries are in lockdown, our program is like opening borders in a way. And one sort of very big upside has also been that when you're doing a lot of these kind of one-on-one coaching or one-on-one mentoring, which is included quite a lot in our programs, it's a lot easier to organize them when everyone doesn't have to come to Startup Sauna to Espoo. For example, if we have international coaches, or in the summertime, a lot of people might be on holiday. So before, we used to have this problem that we would really have to manage their schedules and make sure that we can get 7-8 good coaches to come on a Thursday afternoon during the summer. But now it's like we can get a lot more coaches from different parts of the world to come and help the teams. So that is like a significant upside. And we are actually thinking that bringing the program back fully to a physical one doesn't make sense for us. So we've had so much upside from getting teams from elsewhere and also coaches, so that we feel like it would be regressing our program in a way if we would go back to only doing physical things.
No, that's great insight. So I think it's opened the borders, it's opened the ability of coaching, and most likely the ability of startups to also form international collaborations when you have an open program which is open to certain, not limited to a particular area. So that's a great insight. Let's talk about demo days a little bit. You were there at the last year's demo day for KIUAS as well, I presume. And how do you see demo days and your learnings from last year's demo days when entrepreneurs or startups or founders approach these demo days? What should they think about? Should it be that I have to go there and on my way back, I have to get an investor? So how should the mindset be when you are a startup on a demo day?
Yeah, so first of all, the reason why we organize demo days is that when we have a batch of amazing teams that we select from hundreds of startups taking part in the program, we want to give them a spotlight so that also the rest of the world has a chance to find all of these startups in one single place, so that we, of course, have all of the names of the startups who have gone through our programs on our website and so forth. But for investors and also people just interested in up and coming startups, it's a very good format to just see, a lot of pitches done at the same time, and you can look through the ones you want to. And yeah, essentially it's just meant to give a lot of visibility for the startups, right? Now it is up for the startup to decide what kind of visibility they want. So if you're looking for an investment, then in your pitch, definitely mention that you're raising money and how much you're raising and what do you plan to do with the money. Whereas if you are bootstrapping, if you're not looking for investment, then raising awareness, like rattling the cage, splashing waves and saying that we are coming, be prepared. And that might help you in other ways. So for example, in our demo days, we also have a lot of corporate representatives watching the stream and also on site. So in that way, we have a lot of people watching the event who might be, for example, potential customers. Now, if you're a B2C company, then also raising public awareness and creating hype can be a very, very big thing. And yeah, I would say for this current batch that we have and for the demo day that's going to be tomorrow, a lot of the teams are raising money. And we have seen a lot of very big venture capital firms sign up to watch the stream. So we have some of the biggest ones in Europe coming to watch it. So hopefully that's going to convert into teams also raising money. So last year, around half of the teams that took part in demo day raised some capital within the next half a year. And pretty much all of those people were connections they met either through the KIUAS program or the demo day. So this is what we're aiming for, so that the teams who are raising money after demo day, they don't have to look far, but the sort of connections are already there. And yeah, just like raising awareness, getting the visibility, really sort of making them look good. And that is why we aim for a really good production. But of course, every accelerator has their own twist. Some accelerators might just be focusing on kind of the demo part. So let's say we have an accelerator program that focuses only on building the product. So then the demo day might be really a demo day, so that you just demo what your product does. And there, once again, it's more about showcasing what you've done, what's your momentum, what you're doing. And usually there might be a little bit less investors watching, but still, it all depends on the nature of the program. And for us, it's strictly like visibility for the teams.
And how is your demo day structured? Like, are you giving like a particular time for the team to come in? Is it the whole team? How is it structured? Do you have a central place where it is being done? As people attending it physically? How much time a team gets? How are the questions asked?
Yeah, so the format that we like is that we stream most of the pitches from a physical place, so that it looks better when they are pitching to an audience, even though due to COVID, the audience might not be super big. We want to give the teams a chance to really look good on stage and pitch their idea. It gives a lot of momentum and it makes it feel a lot bigger than it might be if it's just, someone talking over a Zoom, right? However, as we've had a virtual program now and we've had teams from other countries, not all of the teams can attend the actual on-site event in Helsinki tomorrow. And because of that, we wanted to give them also a chance to give a very good quality pitch. And for that, the teams have prepared videos of themselves pitching. But to keep this kind of a interactive touch, and we believe that a pitch it's a little bit double-edged in a way, because it's kind of very, how would you say, the founder is very vulnerable when they are on stage and they're expressing their idea, and 3 minutes is a very short time to include all of the ideas. But also they might leave out things on purpose. So for example, a startup might never mention their competition. They might not mention that they actually don't have a working product, or that they have no idea who the customer is. So because of that, what we want to do is we're going to challenge through a international jury who are going to ask questions from each of the team, around 3 questions each, so that no one has a chance to kind of like leave things unsaid, because we're going to have people who are like from venture capital firms all the way from Africa to China to Finland to Sweden and whatnot. And we have people like roasting the teams. Well, not roasting, but asking tough questions. And even the teams who are then like doing this video part, they're going to have to be online to answer those questions. So they're still like live in the moment. But we didn't want to have them pitch over a Zoom because the quality usually just looks really messy. So instead, we want to show a high quality video with a person pitching with good audio, so that it like looks and feels great, even though they're not at the venue.
Okay, great. Now, for startups' sake, like let's say I'm a startup and I have an investor meeting booked in on one side, and on another side it's a demo day. How would my demo day presentation, or how should it be different from a one-on-one meeting? I think that's one of the questions which comes a lot, like what should I keep it there? Should I just build a lot of mystery around things, or should I be very transparent and kind of spend all the time explaining the features of the product? So what would you be your bird's eye view over there?
Yeah, so I think when you're not doing, when you're doing a 101, it's a lot faster to understand what does the person know already about the industry or the product. So one common problem is that entrepreneurs start talking and they assume that the sort of listener understands the problem inside out. So they might say that CO2 capturing is a very limited technology, as we all know. And then you're like, well, how do we know? Like, what are the problems? Could you please elaborate? And it's a very common story that the startups don't elaborate enough on the problem or the solution. And I think this is especially true in the demo day, so that because they don't know who's in the audience, they really have to explain what they're doing, like they're explaining it to a 5-year-old. And I feel like when they are pitching in an open event where anyone can be watching and thousands of people are watching the stream, then the teams also get some kind of a imposter syndrome / stage fright / they're very sort of nervous, which makes them into kind of trying to squeeze very powerful inspirational statements instead of like just explaining what they believe in. And I think there a rule of thumb that we try to advise people to, and I personally use, is to try to think the audience as just a group of friends, that like your friends, and you're just trying to explain to them in a short period of time what you do. Because then you like try to remove automatically all the nonsense and the jargon and trying to be too epic with your pitch. And instead you start explaining why you are excited about it, why also the audience should be excited. And one really harsh part about pitching is that the emotion is going to be transmitted through the stream to the people watching. So if a person looks like they are very uncomfortable pitching, they feel like they're trying to squeeze in a Steve Jobs kind of pitch, but they can't deliver it, and they feel bad about it, then everyone in the audience is going to feel bad for them. And that's not maybe the reaction you want to have. Usually what you want the audience to feel is that it's a really big problem, and also that the solution that you are proposing is something that they should really think about and consider and think more of. So you can never give enough information in a 3-minute pitch to the audience. But what you can give is like enough information so that their thought about the problem and the idea continues after the demo day. So that when they leave the demo day, they're going to be thinking that, but holy shit, that one team that was trying to solve cybersecurity for kids, I mean, I just can't get over it. You know, the problem they stated is just so important. And I want to do something. Maybe like the audience then wants to join the team. They want to like help you out. And that is, if you want some kind of a reaction to have from the audience, you want them to be like inclined to help you, sending you a message. How can I help you? Can I join your team, or can I invest, or can I buy your product? You know? And yeah, for that also, because we believe that pitching is of course one thing, but actually the follow-up one-on-one meetings are also very important. What we have on our website at demoday.fi is that for all of the or pretty much all of the teams, there's also a personal Calendly link or a similar, so that if you find a team and you really want to know more about them and talk to them, and maybe also if you're an investor and you want to have a private conversation instead of like asking questions publicly in a YouTube chat, then what you can do is book a meeting with them, and you can like straight away start talking also more deeply about how you could be part of it somehow, or your thoughts on the matter.
Okay, I think you said a lot of stuff there. So I think that was like, wow, but it's really good. What I heard consistently from you was that it's very important that you made a couple of very interesting points here, that the pitch should be understandable at a 5-year level. So like that level of simplicity is required. And then you said that when you're pitching, pitch as if you're pitching to friends, like so that you develop that emotional balance and fluidity so that it doesn't sound forced or that you are in a problem, because that will. And third thing that you said, I think, which I really liked, was that investors or audience or corporate attendees, whoever is there uh, coming to the demo day, they should take one thing which lingers on here, and that, I think, what should that one thing be? Should it be your ask, or should it be your problem that you're solving, the vision, the solution slide? That, in your experience, what sticks best in the mind of people?
I think it's always the problem. And
Okay.
it's, of course, like if you have a great solution, then people are going to be like, yes, great, this is like the perfect idea. But most of the time, everyone will find kind of holes in your idea. They will find reasons why it doesn't work. They might say that, well, people don't want to buy it anyway. Or they might say that the market isn't ready, or like whatever reason you want to find. There's always reasons why something doesn't work. But you want the audience to think about why this needs to work, why we need to find a way to make it work. So, for example, with any startup that is solving, let's say, climate change, it's a lot easier to start the pitch by saying that climate change is something that we need to do. And for example, we have a company pitching tomorrow that is not only working in actual climate, mitigating climate change, but they're working on the climate adoption part, right? And they can make a statement that we've gone past a certain point. We're going to have to start thinking about how we're going to adapt to the new climate. And this is going to be a huge problem. It's going to cost so and so much to all the farmers in the world. Here's our solution. No spoilers about the pitch, but I think it's going to be pretty amazing, their pitch tomorrow. And it's going to be, if that's the starting point, you're going to be like, well, okay, what do we need to do? And then they come in with a solution in hand. And you might say that, well, actually, this is a pretty prominent solution. And if this solution doesn't work, at least the team is working on the right problem, right? So even though the solution will be pivoted away or the team might change a bit, they're still working on something really, really important.
Okay.
So I think that's like a pretty good starting point, so that you're really working on the right problem and you make that sort of stick. And maybe to sort of, as a personal experience, I was once pitching in a hackathon, and it was a SDG related hackathon. So about solving really big climate related problems mainly. And we had a pitch of a product. We had a demo. We had built something over a weekend. It was really phenomenal. And I delivered a very emotional pitch. And I was saying that we need this. We need to have it now. We need to start working on it. I was like ranting about it, that here's what we need to do. And I was like the second last pitch, and like there was a round of applause, and I was like so certain that we're going to win this hackathon. And then after me comes a friend of mine. They didn't have a demo. They didn't have a slide set. They had just like screenshots of what they had drawn on paper. And their idea was to have like these kind of filters on top of buses that capture carbon straight out of the air. And they said that what if we don't actually go carbon zero, but we go carbon positive or like carbon negative? So that we're actually reducing carbon from the air. And the way he framed it was like this very kind of friendly, just saying that, what if we could just do this? Wouldn't that be cool? And they won the hackathon. And I've been ever since quite salty about it, because I gave everything to that pitch, and everything, our team did really a lot of work. And then one guy comes on stage with just a bunch of drawings, and he just said that, like, he got the audience thinking, what if we could put these kind of filters to every bus in there? What would it actually mean? And everyone after his pitch was just thinking about, how could we make this happen? How could we do it? And so I think the difference there were a lot of differences between our pitches, but the main difference was that I was very strong about, this is the only solution we need, whereas he was that, here's what we could do. Could it work? And then the people just started thinking about it, and when it came to voting, then the jury voted that they had a better idea. So that's my take on it. Of course, there might be other reasons as well. Maybe I wasn't so charismatic as I thought, but nevertheless, yeah.
No, but that's a very good example. Sometimes it's the simplicity of a solution, and people, if they can grasp something very simply and very quickly. So maybe that bus and a filter on top, that's the image that's stuck in the head. And it was very easy to digest and see, okay, this might connect to this problem in a good way. Could be that way. But really interesting example. I'm just thinking, um, on demo days, do you, so because startups are always working on a pitch deck. It's not that you do a pitch deck and it's over. You're always iterating on your pitch deck and making it better and better, and you're presenting in a several meetings. Do you think on a demo day, it's still the pitch deck which is the main focus, or is it you as a person and pitch deck goes in the background? Like, how strong should the focus be on your deck, or should you just throw away the deck and do some slides which are just for the demo day? What do you think works when you are seeing these startups? Like, do they bring their standard pitch decks, or how does it work? Yeah.
So it's definitely twofold. One thing is that decks are superly overrated, right? So
Okay.
if you cannot speak and if you cannot express your vision as you should be able to do as a founder, then no pitch deck is going to save you. Then on the other hand, if your pitch deck is really bad and clumsy, then it gives a really bad impression of you as well.
Okay.
At best, the pitch deck really supports you and the story you are telling, and it's sort of like a kind of like a third arm, you know. It kind of like helps you out, but it's not like who you are essentially. So I would say that people focus a little bit too much on the pitch deck, but one important thing to mention is that there is never a one pitch deck that would work in all occasions, but rather you need a pitch deck for every different occasion.
Yeah.
So if you're sending something over to an investor, that shouldn't be the pitch deck you're coming to demo day with. If you're sending something to a potential client, that shouldn't be the same pitch deck as the previous two. So you should always think about who's in the audience and is the pitch deck a standalone thing? So I'm just going to send it and they can read all of the information there. Or is it going to be something that is going to support when I go on stage to talk about my idea for this company? So if you go on stage and you talk about your company, you can have a lot more pictures and a lot less text. But if you're sending something over, then of course you need a lot more text, because a picture of a planet doesn't really encapture what your plan is for saving the world, for example. So keep in mind who you are talking to and what's your ask, and try to really step into the shoes of the audience. So when you're going to demo day and you're thinking of the investor in the audience, can you give in that pitch enough information that they will make the investment decision? Well, no. But rather what you're doing is that you're trying to score a follow-up meeting. You're trying to get enough interest that the investor is going to think that they're going to have to talk to you soon, because otherwise someone else is going to invest it for them. So things you want to encourage are urgency, the validity, or kind of like any references why you are successful or that you're on the track to successfulness. And then also, what's the ask? What kind of ballpark figures are we talking about? Because if you don't, it's a difference if you're raising 2 million or you're raising 100,000, and it attracts different kinds of investors. You need to elaborate what kind of help you're looking for. Are you looking for just money so that you can hire people? Are you looking help for international expansion? Where are you going? For these are things that venture capital or venture capitalists are interested in. And also, of course, the biggest thing, what's the market size? Like, how big can the thing get? Because if we have companies that are just building something that is only going to be a 1 billion market, a venture capital firm probably won't invest because they just can't make enough returns to cover up the entire portfolio. But like, that's a different thing than like the VC dynamics. But you kind of have to give these basic things so that the VC knows that, okay, this is something I should consider investing into. And then, of course, no one is going to believe your product 100% just based on a pitch of 3 minutes. But rather, they're going to want to see it. They're going to want to feel it. They're going to want to see proof of it. And that's not something that you can include in a 3-minute pitch. Entirely.
Very good points. Again, a lot of material there for our listeners and later viewers of this chat. Like, you made a very interesting point on urgency. So you need to develop a fear of missing out, that this is you here, and once you're gone from the stage, there's a very little time for anybody to catch up with you. So I think that's fear of missing out is good. Proof and references, and what's the ask. On the ask, how specific you should get. Now that's the question. Like, when you're pitching to a public on a demo day, should you really go out and say like the valuation details and everything, or does it Or is it okay to say that we are a seed company, we are a pre-seed company? Should you break it down more for the audience? What's your experience there?
I don't think you should go into either the valuation or what stage of a company you are. Like you can
Okay.
say that you are pre-revenue. That's a good thing to say because then everyone knows that you don't have revenue. But saying that you are seed stage doesn't really mean quite a lot. So rather
Okay.
have sort of your stage come across implicitly through the presentation. So when you can say that, usually a pitch goes something like this. You say the punchline of your company, then you go into the problem, and you say that this is the problem. This is a really huge problem. A lot of people have this. It's a really expensive problem. No one else has really solved it up to date. And currently people are really struggling. And according to our surveys, people are saying that they would pay to get this problem solved. Then you go into the solution and you say, well, that is exactly what we've built. And we've built this product. It's very cool, fresh, modern, using the best tech and using technology that is so new that there's not even a possibility that this product could have existed 5 years ago. So that is why we are at this right now. Then you're saying that, well, what's the value for the actual people using it? And then you elaborate a little bit about how the business model works, how you get money, and what's the cost of doing things. And you can show that it's a very lucrative market. It's a big business, and you can get like 5% of every transaction, or your margins are going to be super high because there's a huge demand for this. And after that, you're going to go into things like competition. You're going to talk about the team. You're going to talk about all the kinds of things like your roadmap, what kind of things you're going to build. And when you come, usually the ask is in the very end. When you say that we are looking to raise 1 million euros to hire more people to our dev team and also expand into these countries, it should feel like a very reasonable thing that, well, okay, if they have done these things before already, that's a very ambitious and a good next step, and kudos to them if they can achieve it, kind of. And I think one of the teams, actually, I'm spotting a little bit, but there's tomorrow going to be one team, and in their pitch, they have this kind of a phrase that in the last year, they have 10x their business, and now they're asking for a certain amount of money because they're going to 10x again. And it's like a very powerful way of saying that we have both a track record of getting things done. So we are on the path to do very big things. Are you going to be with us or not? Here's how much it's going to cost, right?
Okay.
One thing that I would never mention is the sort of actual amount of equity you would give or anything like that. That's something you're going to have to negotiate with them, with like the investors, and I don't think it's like a good idea. You look for benchmarks, of course, and ask around, for example, from portfolio companies of an investor when you get into the talks, but don't like go so much into the details. It's good to say how much money you're raising and what the money is going for. And also the timeline when you are raising. So some teams might say that they are raising only in 2022, whereas some teams might say that we are closing our funding round of 5 million, and there's like we're halfway through our funding round or something like that. And then investors know that, okay, there's already people on board. I wouldn't be the lead investor. There's something that I could then like contribute to if I want to be like tagging along.
Okay, very, very good points here again. So don't mention the equity that you're giving out, but do mention what your ask is. Don't mention about the stage. Let people infer based on your milestones that you have covered and the next. So I think milestones are an important thing. If you have made some milestones, talk about them, and where you're going with the money. It's important if you can squeeze it in your presentation. What happens after the presentation? How should you, once you get off the stage, do you think, how should you handle later meetings? In your demo days, is it the mix of corporate people you're saying? How is your demo day audience mixed up?
It's all kinds of people. There's just people interested in startups. There's corporate representatives who might be looking for a startup to join or do a pilot together. So if you're, for example, working on something very industrial, there's a lot of big companies in Finland who are interested, and of course outside of Finland as well, who are interested in trying things out. So especially like I would say in manufacturing or like the forestry industry or like from building ships to building planes, everything in between. A lot of them are looking for pilots. So talking to those people always, if you're working in the industry, is a good idea because you never know if something gets going. That's a whole nother discussion, how you do a good corporate collaboration.
Yeah.
But yeah, after the pitch, it's important, of course, to talk to people, and we are recording all of our pitches, and we want to give the teams also the pitch, then like links to YouTube, so that if they want to use their pitch to some other purposes later. They can just like link their YouTube video of a very high quality pitch that was done on a stage with a mic and like an audience applauding. So then it's also, if you're like talking to, let's say, business customers, it might be a good thing to show that, well, if you want to know what we're about, here's our pitch from demo day a few months back. But yeah, overall, talk to people and of course learn from the pitch and the event. Like if you see other teams pitching and they have something that they do really right, and there's a team where you feel like, wow, those people really aced it, then take the learnings, incorporate them into your startup and your pitch, and yeah, just use it as a visibility / learning experience to the fullest. And for each startup, it's going to mean a different thing. For some of them, it's just like pitching, and there might be teams who are not looking for investment. They're just like pitching, and they have a great time and they enjoy the event and the end of the program. That's great. And they maybe get some new customers through the visibility of the stream. But then there might be companies who are like have to answer a lot of emails afterwards and a lot of content requests and like a lot of LinkedIn requests and so forth. And last year, for example, we had several teams getting multiple meetings from investors straight after demo day, through the calendar links, for example. So the next days for some teams were fully booked with just like talking to people.
Got it. We have a couple of questions here. One is, in a fundraising round, can the valuation of the company change?
Of course. Yeah. Like when the sort of, okay, this is not my expertise. So of course this is something that you want to maybe then like check on the, when push comes to shove. But especially in early stage companies, the valuation is very kind of arbitrary. And we have some teams who have like gotten an offer from a venture capital firm. And for example, they have said that, yeah, we're willing to invest a certain amount of money. We want 20% in equity. And then the founder says that, well, you won't get 20, you get 10.
Okay.
I just made up these examples, but nevertheless, if you change the amount of equity you get for money, then the valuation changes as well, right? Yeah. So because of that, as well as always a negotiation going on, you're also in a way negotiating the valuation. So with that said, it can be changed. And the earlier your company is, the more there's kind of like gray area of what the valuation is. And well, I guess maybe the thing to think about is whether you want to use convertible notes or, for example, the safes that are very popular in Silicon Valley, which is a simple agreement for future equity. So the idea is that instead of getting a funding round super early on, so let's say you're a deep tech company and you look into getting some angel investment or a venture capital money. And it's really hard to determine your valuation because you don't have revenue, you don't have customers, you're just building the team, you're still part of a research program or something. So because of that, all the ambiguity, it doesn't maybe make sense to just throw in a number like, okay, you're worth 1 million or 10 million or 500,000. So because of that, one model that is very common is that instead you agree on this kind of a convertible note so that they give you the money and then the equity amount is going to be determined on a future round. So only when you're raising a bigger round in the future where there might be already that you have the customers and you have the revenue and you have more of these kind of like traditional business metrics of how well you're doing, then the convertible notes are going to be turned into equity based on that valuation. And usually also these convertible notes, because you don't have to do the valuation, it saves a lot of time with the getting the funding. So you might say that it's just like you just have to agree on the amount and you just have to agree that the sort of terms of the convertible notes are okay. But you don't have to be stuck in the valuation and calculate. So, okay, if I give 5% or 7%, what does it really mean? Because that all is going to be determined only in the future round. Then, of course, you have to make sure that the future round isn't like trampling your valuation or anything, but that's okay. But it usually can save a lot of time. And it's very, very popular in the United States and Silicon Valley. And it also gives a little bit more power to the founders. And this is, of course, something as well that is covered in the Starting Up course. And I saw there's a question about due diligence in the chat.
Yeah. Is it easier in SAFE? Or does it go faster, the due diligence process?
Do you mean, is the due diligence easier in the SAFE process?
Yeah.
To be honest, I think that depends entirely. And
okay.
I have to also say that with our teams, usually we get the teams talking to investors, but it's usually a very private conversation, sort of what are the terms and what are the things they're looking for. So what we can tell is that due diligence time varies quite a lot. And one sort of, this is just my personal thing that I've observed from the United States, is that usually the things that happen in Silicon Valley, it takes a few years and they land into Nordics. And one trend that I've seen there is that there's more and more venture capital companies that don't do due diligence, but rather they just invest very, very fast. So for example, if anyone has heard of Tiger Global, they've invested a lot of money in the last year into a lot of very promising startups, and they're doing it like super fast. Every week they're investing like millions into startups, and sometimes the checks are also really, really large. And their approach is that they just skip the due diligence part. They just want to be the first investor, because there's not only competition among startups, but there's competition among venture capitalists. In Finland currently, the situation is more like you can easily get personal connections with several of the top investors in Finland. And then you talk with them and then you figure out a deal and everyone is kind of happy. But when you're a serial entrepreneur in Silicon Valley and you have a track record of building a good company, you don't really care about how long, like you want the due diligence as short as possible, right? You want to cut all the bureaucracy of getting a funding. So you might do like super fast, safe rounds of like a few $1 million, even though your company doesn't have any customers or any revenue yet, and your team is like 2 people with an idea, and you just get going as fast as possible. So I think the trend overall has been that things go faster and faster, and there's more power with the founders. So I believe that trend is also going to be seen in Finland at some point and the Nordics, so that there's going to be even less haggle and distress with the due diligence. Of course, there are some things that you really probably might want to check, that the founders are legit and the things they are talking about are truthful. But I think all of this is going to be more and more automized, and in the future, investment decisions are going to be a lot faster, and probably also AI assisted and whatnot. So it's not going to be this kind of a thing that you have the sort of investment decision, but then you take like 2 months of due diligence or something. I think that's going to be cut down a lot shorter, and that is something that founders want, a lot shorter due diligence times.
Excellent. Let's take thank you, one more question regarding location. If the company is registered, we have 2 questions. Will a product audit have an impact on investor interest engagement? By product audit, I mean an independent review of UX or code architecture quality of the product by a reputable independent company. So it's the technical due diligence, probably it's less of the financial due diligence. To
be honest, this is something that we don't have too much experience of. Overall, I guess the rule of thumb is the more you have kind of references and audits, the better it looks. But I would argue that the investors, kind of all of them, have their own things that they're looking for anyway. And for example, some of the most active investors in Finland, they don't really care about the product at all. In early stage companies, they just look at the team, and if they have a longer talk with them, and if they feel like the team is serious about solving a really hard problem and their initial idea seems kind of okay, then maybe they don't really care about so much. I feel like only in the later rounds, when we're talking about tens or hundreds of millions, then it also a little bit changes, I guess. But then you also have validation from like the customer side.
Exactly.
To be honest, I don't really know.
But I think this is a good question. I know of a company based in a Swedish town called Växjö. They have a very interesting technical due diligence product. So they have this interface where you put in your code and it can tell you how well this is structured. So there are solutions coming out there. As Patrik is saying, usually technical due diligence is a difficult thing to do very quickly, unless it's automated in some way. And maybe in the earlier stage, it's more the team and the big vision that investors are looking for. Like, can they trust this team to deliver a solution which can pivot so many times before it goes to the market?
Yeah,
so I think,
then like I think more of the trend is currently that investors are saying that, like, we don't know how to run your company. You do what you need to do, show us promising figures and like some references that people are using your product and their problem is being solved, and then you take care of like the marginal cases or kind of the extremes that you understand that no one's rights are being violated or something like that, then I think it's kind of okay. But I don't think we see very often this kind of like technical audits.
Okay. Very good. We have one last question. I don't know if it's relevant to the topic, but it's Vala saying, one more question regarding location. If the company is registered in US SV and takes Nordic investment, is there more to consider? Like beyond border investment. So let's say a company which is Finland based gets Finland based investors, as opposed to you get an investor from outside the country. So is there a big difference? Yeah.
Usually there isn't too much of a problem. Of course, like it might be easier if the person is in, for example, the same country, and of course there might be some different legal standards with what kind of documents you use for it. So I would say it's definitely extra effort if the investor is from another country, but we haven't had any problems with our alumni from getting investments from people outside of Finland. And I would imagine that if it's not hard to get an investment from a United States investor in Finland, it probably isn't too hard either the other way around.
Got it.
Yeah. Haven't done this myself, though, so can't tell really, but good question.
We also have a last question. I think, Victor, I'll direct you to our last week's talk with MasterCard, Lighthouse. I think Lana was there, and she explained some very interesting fintech metrics that you could look at as the first founder. They even gave 2 or 3 examples. So check the video of that talk. You might find the answer to this question over there. But thank you for raising the question. Patrik, if you have a couple of minutes, maybe paste those links that you were talking about. Like where is the demo day, the knowledge resource bank that you had, where people can find those agreements or term sheet templates and all. And finally, I think you talked about that matchmaking or a directory platform for co-founders. If all these 3 things are there, maybe you can also send me after the talk, and I can put it in part of our follow-up email to everyone. So both ways it can go. But I'll like to thank everyone over here for being here. Do watch out KIUAS's demo day tomorrow, and this is going to be fun stuff. So, and get ready for your demo day if some of you are planning to pitch on a demo day or a larger audience going forward. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Vala. Thank you, Pratik, and all you wonderful people out there. Is it possible to save the chat on this webinar platform? I'm not sure, but I would say we'll stay here for half a minute more or a minute more, and while everybody cuts and pastes this in some document. So just open a Word document or something and copy paste what Patrik just wrote. These are 3 good links for entrepreneurship course, co-founder, and demo day attendance tomorrow.
Yeah. So if you want to see 26 amazing pitches, join tomorrow. We're going to be starting at 4 p.m. Finnish time. So if you're located in Sweden, that's going to be 3 p.m. and it's going to last for 4 hours. And I don't expect everyone is going to be watching with full attention for 4 hours of pitches, but you can find on the website demoday.fi. You can find all of the startups. You can find which ones look more interesting than the others, and then you can choose which ones to show. We also have the schedule there. So be sure to go there and check it out. And yeah, super happy to see you then tomorrow also. I'm going to be probably talking there as well. So
brilliant.
Hear more of me.
Perfect. Patrik, see you there tomorrow. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you to KIUAS and for being here and explaining their processes and how they approach the startup demo days and the overall startup ecosystem. Thank you so much for taking time out. Thank you so much, our community and the Startup Grind team.
Thank you.
You guys are awesome. Take care and have a good day.